Welcome to Your Candidate Community Conversation, Your Candidate, Your Vote. I'm Habib Rahman with you, and I have Kalita Mitra. She's a journalist and CEO and founder of Your Media. Thank you.
Thank you
and
for having me.
And we have Aber Kawas with us. And I want to put some words out there about you so that we can get into our real conversation. So you're watching this show tonight we are actually turning our attention to one of the most closely watched race in New York politics, okay? As working families across the Queens grapple with rising costs, housing challenges, immigration concerns, and growing debate over foreign policy, a new generation of candidates is seeking to reshape the political landscape. Joining us today is Aber Kawas, a community organizer, activist, and candidate for New York State Senate District 12. For last 15 years, she has been involved in grassroots movements, advocating for higher wages, immigrant rights, criminal justice reform, and greater economic opportunity for working class New Yorkers. Born and raised in New York City as the daughter of Palestinian refugee, Kawas says her political journey was shaped by personal experiences, including that detention and deportation of her father by U.S. immigration authorities. So ICE is new to you, but U.S. immigration is not new. They have been doing this for a while. When she was young, she argues that those experiences gave her firsthand understanding of the challenges faced by immigrant families and inspired her to commit to organized and public services. Kawas also has been active in campaign addressing U.S. policy towards Israel and Palestine, including efforts to challenge the role of New York-based organizations in supporting policies she believes contribute to human rights violation. Her positions have granted both strong support and significant debate, making her one of the more closely watched voices in this election cycle. Now, seeking to represent New York District 12, Senate District, Kawas says she is running to challenge the status quo at the time when many New Yorkers feel left behind by rising living costs, economic uncertainty, the deep political divisions. So tonight, we will discuss with her vision for Queens, her plans for addressing affordability, immigration, public safety, and education, and why she believes voters should send her to Albany. So please welcome New York State Senate District 12th candidate, Aber Kawas. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I know it's been a busy time. You also coming from New Jersey, and we'll talk about that, why and what happened and your experience. But I will turn to you, Kalita, and let you.
Sure. Well, it's lovely. Thank you to TBN24 for co-hosting this with Epicenter. We're so honored to be co-hosting these series of really important conversations with the candidates before you cast your vote. So Habib alluded to your personal experiences that really propelled you into politics. And this is a case, I can't think of a better one we've heard so far of, the personal really being very political. And so I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the campaign and how your family's experience kind of propelled you into this position of, throwing your hat in the ring. And then the impact that immigration enforcement had on your family.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. Again, honored to be here with you all. Like you said, I just came from Delaney Hall in Newark, New Jersey. That's why, I'd be maybe more candidate-like in a blazer or something, but we had to walk a far distance to get to Delaney Hall. And one of the reasons that I felt it was important to be there in Delaney Hall was because there are so many people who do not realize that when people get picked up by ICE on the streets here, they get sent very often to New Jersey. And, I talk about how I entered into politics. It was because my own father in the post 9/11 period, where so many Muslims across New York City, but across the nation, Muslims, but also South Asian, Sikhs, people who were perceived to be Muslim, were picked up by ICE, were targeted by, immigration forces. My father was detained for 3 years, and he was eventually deported. And we used to go to New Jersey to go visit my father. We would have 3-hour train to bus rides to go visit him. And so I know how difficult family separation is, even from the beginning of the detention, before deportation. And that's something that led me into organizing. I'm somebody who started to organize and advocate for immigration justice. And one of the reasons that I'm running for office is because I have had so many experiences as the child of immigrants, going to talk about immigration policy, as somebody who went to speak to city council members about the NYPD surveillance that prevailed in our community, and as someone who has gone to speak up for Palestinian human rights, I go to elected officials' offices and I work to get people to go speak to them, and we prepare ourselves, we talk about the best policy to support our communities, and very often they say no. And I think it's time for us to get elected officials who are movement oriented, who speak for the people, and who are going to say yes and then help us win.
Yeah, and, we're living in a funny time, and when I say that, funny means crazy funny. What does that really mean? Everything is upside down. If you talk about the right things, the correct things, you are the crazy one, and if you are the genocidal one, killing babies and women and children and the elderly, then you are the sane one. And everybody else is insane. You heard about what happened to Hassan Piker and Jen from,
Yes, they're being banned from the UK.
For why? Because they were critical and, critics of Israel. And they talk about divestments and other good questions that you should be asking.
Yes.
So I'm going to come back to you. But as you were saying, your campaign is rooted to your personal experiences, and you are a daughter of Palestinian refugee, right? The impact of immigration enforcement, I'm going to start from there, had on your family. You just gave us a glimpse of it, right? The 3 hours you had to go to see your father when he was at the detention, right? And post 9/11, I was here and I went through it, so I know, you should know, what it's being like. But, even if you are non-Muslim, doesn't really matter. If you're brown, the Patriot Act. What was that?
It was the Patriot Act.
Right.
And we did have Jackson Heights, the train station was one of the most surveilled places in New York City. So even just to ride the subway every day, we would go through quite something. Right. So
I'll tell you something. I was crossing the street in city, 34th Street. There's a white lady looking at me, and I know she's looking at me. I'm trying to avoid it, right? So she asked me, first question, are you from Pakistan? So I said, no. And I'm trying to avoid her. Then she goes, and the emotion was running high at that time.
Right.
She's, are you from Afghanistan? I said, lady, are you trying to get me killed? Because you can get killed at that, Afghanistan.
Well, we had also, there was the...
Oh, you mean back at that time?
There was the state of hate crimes and
So I don't want to give you...
No, I think it's important to situate.
So how have those experiences shaped your policy priorities, and what are specific changes you would advocate for those, for to better protect the immigrant community? Let's start from there, especially in Queens.
No, thank you. So I think it's so important to know that, there have been so many communities who have been impacted by police surveillance in Queens. Astoria, one of the neighborhoods in our district, parts of Elmhurst, parts of Jackson Heights, places where there were high concentrations of Muslims. We had informants and people in our communities. When I was in college, that's when we saw that the NYPD was surveilling Muslim communities, surveilling our restaurants, surveilling our mosques, surveilling our college spaces. And I had students that I knew who were named in the NYPD reports. I had friends who had befriended NYPD informants unknowingly, and that, traumatized them for many, many years of their life. And so this is not new to us. And also the fight, against ICE is not new to our communities. We all know that ICE was actually created in the post 9/11 period. And it was specifically around national security concerns. And now it, has when it started targeting our community, at this point, ICE is a rogue agency just picking up people off the street. So firstly, we want to make sure, and overall, I'm somebody who stands for abolishing ICE and fixing our immigration system at large. In the New York State Senate, I'm going to be pushing, things like New York for All. Right. This is detangling ICE's collaboration with New York State police and local police. This is a really important thing. We're going to advocate for laws that are going to demask ICE agents. We're going to advocate for laws that are going to actually allow people who are picked up by ICE to actually have the state help fund their representation. One of the things that people don't talk about, my father was in ICE detention for almost 3 years. We had to pay for lawyers for almost 3 years, almost our entire life savings. Our family really suffered economically traumatically when my father was picked up. And people always think, we always talk about the conversation on immigration, about the person picked up off the street.
Yeah.
That's so important. But ICE destroys entire families. It destroys entire communities. And immigration is it's not about just that system. Immigration is a public health issue. It will cause mental health issues. It will cause health issues for people. It's an education issue. If students whose parents are picked up by ICE, or live in fear of that, it's harming them. So it's something that is holistic and that we have to look at as elected officials as something that is a holistic issue that we have to address. So those are some state priorities, but overall, we need to actually be pushing for an immigration system where we are not reacting to the harm that's coming at us.
Yeah.
We need to actually fight for dignified ways and pathways to citizenship so that people can achieve legal status, because we don't give people a way to achieve legal status and then we demonize them and arrest them for being here in this country.
So be proactive rather than reactive.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then, nowadays, they started with the illegal immigration. Now the legal immigration is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Well, what are there's so few paths to come into the country.
There are no paths.
It's like,
There are no paths.
Yeah.
The path is this: I'm going to look at you that you don't belong here, and it's everything that's possible within the capacity. That's what the administration is doing today. We'll talk about this, but the people are suffering today, not on immigration. I mean, I was looking at a report that since the war started with Iran, and people paid $59 billion gas.
Yep.
Gas money, right? So on top of that, inflation is running hot. So people are suffering. And unemployment is running hot.
Yeah.
It just doesn't show in the report. So my question is, in your 15 years of organizing around these issues, such as higher wages, that you have been working for workers' rights and economic justice, many New Yorkers are struggling with this rising cost of housing, groceries, childcare. What are your top 3 priorities for addressing this affordability if you were to be elected in New York State Senate?
Yes, thank you for this question. This actually gets to the heart of our entire platform. We actually have a 6-plank platform. So it's actually, overall, we say we're fighting for the world in the world's borough. And I want to comment on what you just said. We call Queens the world's borough. It's one of the most diverse places in the country.
No question about that.
Everybody is attached to where they come from. And we need to address that. Why did people end up here in the first place? I'm the child of Palestinians whose families were dispelled from Palestine during the Nakba, right? So when my family comes here, it's after years of occupation, after years of war in the countries that they lived in. And then they come to the United States and they are part of the 780,000 Palestinians who were dispelled from Palestine, who live now up to 5 generations outside of Palestine in the diaspora in countries all over the world. And then they come to the United States where they are targeted, right? They're targeted by the immigration system here. And that's something that is a story of so many immigrants who live in our district. And so our platform is about fighting for the world in the world's borough. That the local affordability agenda is completely attached to what is happening globally. Our 3 planks, we have fund dignity. That is funding healthcare for all, funding affordable housing for all, and funding free transit for all, and delivering on the affordability agenda that people voted for in the millions to elect Mayor Rahman to achieve for them. And then we have fight destruction. That is fighting against ICE picking up people off the street. And then secondly, fighting against climate disaster, which again is completely related to the global. I use an example, especially for the Bangladeshi communities here. A few months ago in Bangladesh, university students could not go to university.
Correct.
Right? Because there was an energy crisis that was happening in Bangladesh at the time. And the reason for that energy crisis was because of the war in Iran. So US tax money, right, and US elected officials are choosing to go to war, an unjust war in Iran. It causes an energy crisis in Bangladesh where university students cannot go to school. And then if any of those students end up migrating to the United States because they're looking for economic opportunities, because they are looking for a way to live and survive, they come here like the many immigrants that live in our own district, and they're demonized by ICE. It's all connected. And so that's why the last platform on our, platform plank is we are an anti-war campaign. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the Not on Our Dime Act, which I helped develop with then Assembly Member Mayor Ramdani. We're going to pass that, but we're also trying to pass divesting from military bonds, Israel bonds in our own pension funds in states, and to stop the pipeline of weapons being shipped from New York City to Israel or to bomb other people across the globe. We believe that we need to fight for the world and the world's borough. The affordability agenda here is completely connected to us fighting for a better world overall.
How would you respond to critics who say that state lawmakers, despite the connectivity that you've just very eloquently laid out, still really should be focused on more local issues than international politics, right? So you've mentioned a few: transit, definitely under the state's purview. You've mentioned unemployment right now, definitely of issue at the state. I think the affordability, housing. Of course, you've seen, Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani together quite often around childcare. I mean, I just wonder what you would say to critics who are like, we get that it's connected, but really, Aber, we need you to be fighting for the buses, the subway, the things that are just safety, right here in
safety in the subway, availability, affordability, and people are losing SNAP benefits and all these things. Who need it most?
Of course. I mean, I think that, it's really interesting. This question comes up a lot because we have been highlighting the global aspect. And I think what is important to understand about what I'm trying to do with my race, but also the movement that I come in, is that we are trying to change the political landscape. Because yes, the most important thing that is our job is we are fighting for our constituents to be able to afford their lives and have dignity in their lives. That means afford their housing. That means afford their healthcare. That means for them to have reliable transit. That means for us to address their living conditions, their work conditions. Those are all things that are 100% a priority of our campaign. And they are 100% a priority of hopefully our office. We will have constituent services that are benefiting our communities. But I think that what is also important is that we actually think holistically about the political system that we have to negotiate in. And I think that is the problem. New York State elected officials go to the New York State legislature. This is one of the most stagnant legislators across the country. So we have to fight for all these things. I mean, if you just look at the budget cycle this time around, the issues that everybody is talking about, people want tax the rich, people want universal health care, people want, fast and free transit, people want their lives to change. And then we get a budget that is like weeks late, right? Where just the provisions are not in there. The governor is not listening to what the people want and is not addressing an impending affordability crisis that people are living in. People are struggling to make ends meet. And what is happening is our political class is not meeting that agenda. And lastly, I will say that it is actually connected to the wars that are happening. Now, the state is really kind of a mediator between what is happening locally on the city level, right, and what is happening federally. So when Trump decides that he's going to cut SNAP benefits, when Trump decides he's going to cut healthcare, when Trump decides he's going to spend $1 billion on war a day, rather than giving that money to education, to schools, then it is going to be up to the state to supplement what we lose. Right? If immigrants are losing their healthcare, people are losing their healthcare, their benefits, the state is then going to have to provide the funds to actually help those communities survive. That's what we go and fight in for as state legislators. And so the budget is getting smaller and smaller and harder to negotiate because we're losing less money, we're losing more money at the federal level because we're going to war, right? And so you need a governor, and leadership who is going to actually make sure that she is, coming and serving those constituents we're going to lose in this situation. And right now we have a state legislator where people are not listening. And that's what we're going in to do. We're going in, one of the main demands of our campaign is tax the rich. Now, this is something that Democratic socialists, along with some progressive candidates, have been pushing for, a few years now, but it's gaining a lot of momentum because what we're saying when we say tax the rich is there are billions of dollars of revenue that we could be using to fund communities if our governor actually just taxed her billionaire corporate donors, right? And corporations who are not paying any money, right? And she's not doing that. She's failing to arrive to the moment. So we need legislators who are going to go in and negotiate everything for their communities, but we need legislators who are going to change the status quo of how the state legislature works, who are going to push an agenda forward where our governor has to listen, and who work with the movements on the streets to make them hear our calls.
Just on the question of one local issue that I feel like it would be good for us to underscore is the role of the state Senate and the Assembly in the New York City subway system. And it is so, so important to so many voters, and yet there's so much confusion over who's running this thing anyway.
Who's running what?
Right. It's right. And so I think it is our daily, probably our most daily interfacing with the body that you seek to be a part of is the subway system and transit. You mentioned free transit. I just wondered if there are any other transit initiatives that you've made a part of your platform. The Interborough Express has come up between Queens and Brooklyn.
Yes.
I think a lot of us have.
That would be so great for us to have.
For those of us who actually still have friends in Brooklyn but never see them, just what are some of your broad brush areas in that space?
So that is a great question. And, there are many things we need to address. Of course, so many people voted in to see fast and free buses, right? We want to make sure that's happening. We, actually our State Senator Michael Gianaris, who is retiring and whose seat I'm running for, was part of the pilot system for the MTA. He worked with then Assemblymember Mamdani on piloting routes where there would be free buses. And we saw that it was a completely successful project. We saw that it actually made buses safer, it made them faster. And we want to actually make sure we're expanding that. So I think thinking through how we're going to expand that program, get the revenue for it. And that's of course for free buses, right? And I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if it's going to happen all at once. It's going to be a rollout, but we're going to push for the maximal thing possible. And then, of course, when it comes to the MTA, right, the Interborough Express, this is something that is extremely important. Adding on stops, because it's so hard right now. I'm somebody who, if I want to go to Brooklyn, I have to go through Manhattan, right, to go to Brooklyn. Yeah. Many of us, right, it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to another part of the city that's actually we have a way to get to. That can be so much more easier, make people's life more accessible, make them be able to travel better, to help our businesses locally thrive. And also, one thing that we think about with the MTA as well is how to make our stops more accessible, adding elevators into the MTA, making sure that we're not spending years and years in construction. We're getting that moving faster. And one of the things in terms of climate is when we build our MTA, one of the best things that we need to do is we need to build in a way that is able to sustain and not get us in a place where we're wasting a lot of money on repairs. If you build better, then you have better infrastructure. So it's also thinking about, things to the minutia of how the infrastructure is built as we're expanding the MTA and making it more accessible for people. And of course, more affordable. It is unaffordable. Yeah.
It's a very good point. This is a very good point. I stopped going to Brooklyn. Because it takes so much. I
don't have friends there anymore.
Yeah. And it's not that
I have a lot of people critiquing me because I grew up in Brooklyn. I can't go there. It's very far. No, it's very hard to get to. Yeah. But I'm in Queens all the time.
Yeah, the city grew from Manhattan to Brooklyn. That was the main hubs, and then it grew outwards and the eastward. People didn't anticipate.
Well, even just for employment, if you're a company and it's we need to act like we're more interconnected than we are, right?
We are not. That's unfortunately. Yeah. You're talking about how the federal dollar taken away for war instead of putting in the Medicare or affordability and the war in Iran is costing us at the state level, right? And you should be. You said you should be. We should be paying more attention. You should be paying more attention to work with Albany.
Yes.
To balance, like we saw Mamdani work with top government to balance $12 billion gap, right? The other guy, who just left?
The mayor, Adams? Eric
yes,
Adams?
Yeah. Thank you.
I thought that's not what I thought you were talking about. The others.
No, I'm talking about.
Eric Adams left a huge budget deficit that the mayor has.
So now the corruption level and then the consequences of it, correct? Now, there are some other issues that I want to bring it up. You have been working with some of the issues related to Israel and Palestine, including your involvement with not on our dime, or one dime on campaign, something like that.
Not on our dime.
Yeah. So I was right. Some voters may support your position, right? While others strongly disagree, right? because of the situation or the time that we live in today, right? How would you respond to these critics who argue that the state lawmakers should focus primarily on local issues rather than international conflicts?
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm fixing my...
That's okay.
There we go. Actually, I'll talk a bit about Not on Our Dime, and thank you for your question. Because actually, Not on Our Dime gets to the crux of how I want to act as a legislator, which is someone who is acting in co-governance. I'm going to speak about local issues, whether that's disability justice, climate justice. You talked about transit. Now, for me, I'm someone who the last 10 years of my background, I spent it in immigration advocacy and police reform advocacy. So, I would say like naturally, right? I would not be somebody who knows everything about transit law, right? Or everything about climate law. But I believe as somebody who came from organizations that engage in policy spaces, that it's the organizers and the activists on the ground who know the best and who are the most well-informed to inform us as legislators about what they need, what policies they want us to achieve. And our job as legislators is to go fight for those policies, but also to work with movements on the ground to help achieve their goals. And that is what we experienced with the Not on Our Dime campaign. Now, Not on Our Dime, when Assemblymember Mamdani came into office, he came to the Palestinian movement and he asked, hey, what are things that we can build on around in policy? Right? What are ways that I can bring this issue to the state legislator? We found that there were millions of dollars that were being raised in New York State by organizations that had charity status, 501c3 status, that were being used to fund settlers going from the United States to go steal Palestinian land, to commit human rights violations, to steal people's land, to commit violence against them, to burn their crops, commit atrocities against them, and even engage in military action against Palestinians. Now imagine, and they're getting tax cuts for that, millions of dollars of tax cuts. That those tax cuts could be going to our education, they could be going to funding our healthcare, they could be going to fund discretionary funds for our communities, right? But those are actually going so that organizations can raise money to commit human rights violations. And that's something that we don't stand for as a movement. And we were able to work with then Assemblymember Mamdani to help learn how to develop a law. A lot of times the Palestinian movement, we maybe didn't engage so much in the policy space, so people weren't familiar. How do you write a law? How do you get it introduced? How do you get it passed? How do you go advocate to different elected officials and lobby them about this law? Those are all things that we worked with his office to learn how to do and to act on. And that's something that I want to do for all the policies I want to work on. If there is a climate bill that there are certain people who have signed on to it and certain people have not, I want to be able to identify who those people are. I want to be able to help the movement groups strategize about how they're going to target elected officials to help sign on to those bills. I want to understand how and help to strategize internally in Albany how we get those bills passed and work in tandem with movements, just like we did with the Palestine movement and Not on Our Dime.
Thank you for that. I want to situate you a little bit in New York City. So you mentioned you were raised in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And then just until recently, when I Googled your name, you were still affiliated with the Assembly seat running against Brian Romero. I know there was some confusion about what you were going to run for. And just to clarify for everybody, you're running in State Senate District 12 against Stephen Raga, who's running against you. What is the connection you have to the community that you're seeking to represent? And can you just give us a little bit of the genesis of the switch from the Assembly seat to the State Senate? And I just want to give you the opportunity to clarify that, because Google is still behind sometimes.
Oh, yes, I know. There's a lot of right-wing media that is spreading lies and misinformation about our campaign. Yeah, so I have been living in Astoria for about 2 years now. And I actually was never planning on running for office. So I moved to Astoria because I was at a time in my life where myself and my husband, we were kind of looking for a place to live where we would be near our friends, a place where we can raise our kids, a place where we can, see our future. And I think many people who are like in their 30s know that if your parents are far away, and my parents live in Jordan now because my dad was deported. So they live in Jordan. My mom lives with him. They're not around. I don't have my siblings around. So I chose to live near, many of my friends so that we can kind of have a village and community to take care of each other. And that's why, I've been been living in Astoria. I never actually planned to run for office. I was actually working for the last year on with an organization called CLEAR, based at the CUNY Law School. And it was a continuation of the work that I have actually been doing within this community and many communities. I have a long history of working in Arab American organizations around immigration issues, and especially working with Arab communities. So I've worked in Astoria for a long time, but I've also worked in different parts of Queens, whether that has been Jackson Heights, Jamaica, Elmhurst. I've worked in those spaces because we have been doing know your rights workshops for people who are impacted by police surveillance. I've been organizing with communities who've been impacted by Islamophobia. And so I had a long history of working with those communities, and of course, a lot of Muslim youth organizations that I worked with, especially in Queens. The Ibn Sina Mosque, which is like just a few blocks out of my district, but it's kind of my home mosque, is a sister mosque to my mosque that I went to in Brooklyn. And so I've had a long history of being here in this district, which is also why I wanted to move to it. And, at CUNY Law in this last year, what I was busy doing was I was working on the student activist cases, like Mahmoud Khalil, like 𝗗𝗏𝗖𝗍𝗕𝗏 𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏. They were all clients of CUNY CLEAR, and, was really busy in this last year working on their cases and ensuring that they get out of ICE detention. And that's kind of what I was focused on. And then when I saw, then Assembly Member Ẓahran win the people's victory, and of course we were friends, we had been supporting his campaign and canvassing for him, it felt like there was a watershed moment where we can have a new kind of politics. I lastly, want to say that I worked with Ẓahran on the Not on Our Dime bill. When we introduced that, people told him his career was going to be over. Yeah. People said if you spoke out for Palestinian human rights, that was a fringe issue, that was going to be something that would ruin your political career. And of course, that's why so many elected officials have not spoken out for Palestine. And what we saw in that moment was that so many millions of people actually wanted to elect Ẓahran Mamdani because of his consistency in his political views, and the fact that he stayed consistent on Palestinian human rights alongside fighting for an affordability agenda and people's human rights in New York City. And I saw an opportunity where in this moment where there was an ongoing genocide of Palestinian people that elected officials did not speak out about. The Not on Our Dime bill, which was a place people could speak out about it, had less than 10 sign-ons to that bill. Right? At a time of the height of the genocide. So I just thought that I want to make sure that I'm fighting for my community, for my future, for my children, for my friends, for my neighbors. And I believe that we need elected officials who speak out against all human rights violations. And if you didn't speak out against Palestine at the height of the genocide, right, to me, that shows that you're not going to be consistently fighting for communities. And we need people in office who are going to be consistent fighters. Whether that is for the undocumented worker who is he's not getting his wage because his boss doesn't give it to them and we have to fight for him. We're going to fight for those people, and we're going to fight for people abroad. And we're going to fight against human rights violators coming into our city. This is all connected. It's time for a new kind of politics. That's what the people want. And
those people who you got only 10 people to sign those legislation, and a handful of people, right?
A handful.
And the rest of them is still crying because Ẓahran Mamdani didn't go to the Israeli Day Parade. So we have a lot to talk about these things. Maybe a second round with you. So really quick, you're going to have 30 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Many Latino immigrants, New York, working at low wages, unstable industries like food delivery, construction, domestic work, food services, and, care work. What is the biggest labor reform Albany still hasn't delivered and you would?
Oh, I think the biggest labor reform that we need is the universal minimum wage. The minimum wage has to go up to $30. Right now, we're at a $15 minimum wage. We need to make sure that the minimum wage goes up higher. That is, I think, a battle that we need to bring into Albany. And like I said, we need to fight for this affordability agenda. We need to ask for more, or else we're going to get less.
Can I ask you quickly, also 30 seconds? We're saving the big questions for the 30 seconds, and I apologize for that.
That's okay.
You just got back from New Jersey. What was the scene there like? What can you tell us about Delaney Hall? And, here in Queens, I say this all the time, we are also suffering from deportations, just not in the same kind of national media attention that places like Delaney are getting. Although you just eloquently also told us a lot of people in Queens are affected by that. So I think you're making the connection. But tell us what you saw and what you could tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for speaking out. It's really important that everybody is paying attention to what happens in Delaney Hall because it's really highlighting the complete injustice and dehumanization that immigrants experience when they're picked up by ICE. Right now, when we got there, it was a really highly militarized space. There were police everywhere. There were checkpoints everywhere. We actually had to park our car about 25 minutes away and walk up so that we can actually go near the site where protesters were. And when we got there, it was actually quite quelled and it was calm because a lot of the protesters were imprisoned the night before. There was a curfew. People were kettled, and people were really exhausted from the night before. But there were more people arriving as we got there. I think that it's really important that people realize that the people who are picked up off the streets, they're not very far from where we are, right? Prisons are not very far from where we are. We have to pay attention to what is happening. And people do not deserve to live in unsanitary, crowded conditions. They had maggots in their food and they went on hunger strike to fight for themselves. And they are the people that we need to be paying attention to. And when you're there for them, that means you're going to be there for the immigrants in your own district.
Last questions, again, 30 seconds. I'm sorry, we've been saying this for the last
That's
5
okay.
minutes.
For the last 5
Okay,
minutes, but
so many progressive candidates, such as you, campaign as an outsider. But governing often requires that you may have to compromise somewhere, right? So where are you willing to compromise and where do you draw a farm line that you would not cross?
That's a great question. I think that's something that I am running for office at a time where I think we can ask for more. That's why I'm doing it at this time. Of course, we understand that in office, you're going to have to negotiate. You're going to have to build coalition. Those are all things we have to do. But we also have to bring in the demands of the people, right? We need to bring in tax the rich. We don't need to compromise on tax the rich because actually the governor, it's actually in their favor to pass these laws. It's what people want. If you want to be reelected, if you want to be popular, right, then do the things that constituents are asking for. So I think that what we are trying to do is create the conditions for us to be successful, right? We're going to create the political atmosphere for us to be able to get what we need.
When is the vote? If people want to vote you or for you, where would they go? And how would they know they're voting for you?
Yes, election day is June 23rd. Early elections start on June 13th to 21st. You can find your polling sites. You can go on the internet, look up your polling site. You can go to our website, aberforsenate.com, to find out if you're in district and get out the vote on June 23rd. It's extremely important to express your political will at this time.
Because thank you very much for making time. I know you were coming from Jersey and you had a tough time ahead of you. You have the elections and we wish you all the best. Kalita, thank you.
Thank you.
People who are watching this, and this was jointly organized and hosted by Epicenter and TBN24. If you're watching, if you like your candidate or this candidate, you may want to vote Aber 𝗑𝗏. You have a chance, June 23rd. Thank you for watching. Thank you for with us. We'll see you in the next episode. Good night.